everybody. My name is Jared Altic, and I'm here with Michael Howell. Michael retired as a captain in the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department and is also a retired major in the National Guard. Michael's gained a lot of experience and wisdom overcoming serious injuries, the line of duty death of his sergeant, and in 2017, he went through 2 shootings in less than 3 weeks. Michael was kind enough to sit down with me and let me ask him about the trauma that might be experienced in law enforcement and how his faith and other resources have helped him. Michael, I'm glad to have you here today.
Thanks.
So you've got, almost a decade of military under your belt before you went into law enforcement.
Pretty close.
So 86 to 95, something like
9
that.
9 years, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so you get into law enforcement, and of course, most people in law enforcement go directly into patrol. What kind of jobs did you do over the years?
I started off in patrol, working downtown midnights.
Okay.
Shortly after that, I found an opportunity to apply for the DUI officer's position.
Okay.
And I jumped at that. I'd had an uncle that was left in a vegetative state for the majority of his life due to a drunk 18-year-old kid who hit him out in California. And I had seen that firsthand, so I wanted to make a difference. And so I worked the DUI van for about a year and a half, and then I found out, how rumors go. Hey, because this is a grant, we're doing away with this. It's going to go away.
Right.
And I'm like, well, I still want to work DUI enforcement, so I went to the motorcycle unit.
Okay.
And shortly after that is when everything changed.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those. You've had a couple serious injuries on duty. Mm-hmm. Tell me about each of those.
Well, in 97, I was going through the motorcycle unit training as a motor officer, and that day we didn't really get to do any training because of some FOP business going on, but we were allowed to ride the bike in to work.
Okay.
Worked the shift in a car. The last call I had was a fatality accident up at 18th and K5 in the Fairfax district, and finished that, took the car back to the station, got on the bike, and headed home.
Yeah.
At 3:12 in the afternoon, I realized I was coming into the school zone there in front of Schlegel High School, there at 59th and Parallel, and I remember downshifting a gear and woke up in my mind 15 days later.
Wow.
2 weeks is gone.
Wow. What happened to you in that time?
There was
It's
a kid
for
that
you,
was
but
driving. From what I understand from the accident report and from the officers that responded to my accident, the driver was driving, laid back in his seat. He was trying to follow the bumper of the car in front of him, turning into the lot, and I must have seen what happened because I broke the right brake lever, the front brake lever on the right side. That broke. I was trying to stop from all the physical indications of the damage to the bike. From the training that I'd gone through, I must have been trying to do some emergency braking, but all I remember is waking up in the hospital. My bike hit the right front corner of his car as he was turning and launched me about 75 feet through the air.
Did you have a helmet in those days?
I had my helmet on. I had my bulletproof vest on.
Okay.
But it messed me up pretty good.
What kind of injuries?
I had a brain bleed, which was the most significant injury. I had road rash all over.
Sure.
My left lung was pretty well full of fluid.
Yeah.
I think I broke the first 2 fingers on my right hand, and there were some other injuries. And I was really combative because of the brain bleed.
Yeah.
And they life flighted me to KU Med Center on the 10th of September.
And so you woke up, essentially, your memory of it restarts like 15 days later, and you had, pretty lengthy rehabilitation, right?
Yeah, I was in a coma 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
Spent the first, then I spent the next time going through KU's rehab, but I left KU 15 days later.
Yeah.
The wreck was on the 10th. I left on the 25th.
Okay.
And went home.
Okay.
And then from that point, I think it was 45 days of additional
rehabilitation
at the Rehab Institute in Kansas City, Missouri, which it was the sales program. It was specifically for brain injuries.
Now, something that's frustrating, I know, to a lot of cops, I've talked to a lot of them after they've been injured. all sorts of different injuries, sports injuries, car accidents, you name it. And the downtime before they can go back to their normal duties is a really frustrating time.
Very.
And so you had 45 days. I mean, were you at some point during that time? Were you going back on duty, or was it after?
No.
It was all after.
The wreck happened on the 10th of September. I didn't go back to work. I think until like the first week of December.
Ooh.
And then it was light duty to a desk.
Yeah.
At
Working
the
a call
traffic
desk
division
or something,
because I had to learn how to add, subtract. I could do it all in my head, but I couldn't make the pencil or the pen write the answer on the paper.
Right.
I had no grip strength. My spatial recognition, and I could aim toward a door, and instead of walking toward the door at 12 o'clock, I'd walk into the wall at 2:30.
Right.
I had no sense of balance. That would make one think they were safe to walk, let alone drive.
Right. And then how long a period did that start to come back?
That was, man, it's been a long time. It was December until...
You said it was December before you got back on active duty.
December, basically. I was light duty, and I think that was 5 or 6 months working with Officer Nelson. And then I was assigned to a field training period for 2 weeks with another motorcycle officer.
Right.
And then I was released on my own.
Did you have any anxiety about getting back on the motorcycle?
Oh, I tried to get back on the bike the following April.
Okay.
But my clavicle was one of those other injuries I talked about. It wasn't broke, but it was kind of twisted and distended.
Yeah.
And I just could not. I couldn't pass the base. I couldn't get the bike to do what I needed it to do.
Sure.
So I didn't pass, and so I went to a traffic car, and that was one of the first traumatic events I had following that. And we haven't had a chance to talk about this one yet. But my first night by myself, I rolled up on an accident, car on fire, car smoking. Right there at 59th and Parallel, right around the corner from where I had my motorcycle wreck, and I thought, this isn't gonna be good, because I could see the fire and the smoke,
right.
But it was dark, so it was primarily smoke.
Right.
And I rolled up on the scene, and there was a young man that had been ejected from the car.
Yeah.
And as I got up to him, I checked his pulse, and it was very, very thready and weak.
Yeah.
And he looked at me like, I need help. Help me. And I went to go try and make sure he was positioned safer to where he wouldn't be hit by a car or something, and he died. And later on, before I left the scene, I asked him, at that time it was the massed ambulance service.
Right.
They came up and they said he wouldn't have made it anyway, because his injuries were so severe from being hit by a truck after he was ejected that there was nothing they could do.
Yeah, but still, having been through a traumatic event yourself, I mean, it affects you on a different level.
Well, this one kind of set me back because it was the second time since my wreck I'd seen a dead person.
Right.
The first time was in June of the year after my wreck. Right. Sergeant Aston was one of my sergeants, my patrol sergeants out in West Patrol. He was killed by a driver, by a guy driving a stolen car.
Yeah.
So I was with him at KU. I was one of the last people to be allowed into the emergency room where his body was.
Yeah.
And I got to, I stood there for a few minutes wondering, why. The biggest challenge I had was, why was Rick killed and not me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why am I any different than him? Why did I get to be alive that day on my birthday at the KU as I stood by Rick's body?
Yeah.
And why did he die?
Yeah.
What did he do something wrong? Did I do something wrong?
Yeah, it's that basic survivor guilt.
That was the beginning of my mental challenges that I started going through.
Sure.
Because as a Christian, I understand what happens after death.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. It's clearly laid out in the Bible. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord.
Yes.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, Paul was very clear with that.
Yeah.
But I guess what messed me up mentally the most was I had no memory of my accident, so I didn't know if I had done something right or wrong.
Right.
But what messed me up so much was, why was I allowed to live and my sergeant killed?
Yeah.
That took a long time for me to get over,
Yeah.
simply because I understood, one, I wasn't in charge.
Yeah.
God knows our days are numbered.
But the apparent randomness that we experience with traumatic events, especially accidents, there doesn't seem to be any reason why this person walks away and that person doesn't. And that's hard for us to absorb as human beings.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of my classmates, thought traffic was, and nobody wants to work traffic.
Okay.
Everybody wants anybody wants to be in patrol because that's where the action is at. But for me, again, based on what my uncle had gone through and what I had gone through, both as a accident victim from the motorcycle unit and then seeing this kid,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a reconstructionist. I wanted to find, because I had challenges in high school with math. I'll
Sure.
be honest with you. I mean, I struggled a lot.
Yeah.
But once I started the sheet metal trade and found out that there is an application for algebra,
Yeah.
other than
Yeah.
the dictator standing up in the classroom, finding out what you can do with math in sheet metal work, and then realizing that you can discover reams of evidence from an accident scene if
Yeah.
you understand mathematics.
Yeah.
And that lit a fire for me that
To reconstruct what happened in
to
the
learn
accident.
to try and learn and understand. I understand people who drive reckless, but what caused this vehicle to fail at this point to cause that damage to take that life?
Yeah.
So that's why I focused on trying to be the best accident investigator that I could.
Right.
And as part of that, we attended autopsies,
Yeah.
which fascinated me.
Sure. Sure.
To think that God had created something that unique, as well as
There's complexity to
complex.
it. And, yeah.
I mean, it was kind of interesting and helpful for me in many ways, because when when I attended the first autopsy, the victim, the deceased, had many of the same injuries that I had from my motorcycle wreck. So the forensic pathologist showed me, specifically the brain,
Yeah.
this is what a brain bleed looks like.
Yeah.
This is where yours was. Ironically, this decedent had the same injury in the same location. So it was like, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
I went in the wrong career.
Yeah. It is interesting. It is interesting. Now, you had another injury then sometime later that was a little different in nature, kind of unique, really. Can you tell me a little bit about that one?
Well, let's see. The motorcycle wreck was in 97.
Okay.
Then the second one was an electrical engineer, or electrical shock.
Yeah.
That one bothered me in the sense that it would not let go. We had gone to find a reported missing person that the family had said that it was not normal for him to not be at breakfast every day with his mother.
Right.
He was addicted to meth, but I felt I needed to do all I could to help the brother find his missing brother. So I went out with this individual and a couple of my officers, and we went to go try and find this guy.
At that time, you're a sergeant, probably?
Yes, I was a sergeant.
Yeah. Okay.
And we found him, and we found him as we were alerted to where the body was by one of the female neighbors in that area. And as I walked up the hill, I could see the body about 75 feet away. I knew that, now we had a natural death or an accidental death at least. As I walked toward the body, I could see a power line that was hanging down. Almost, in my mind, I see it as if you could almost reach up and touch it.
Right.
But come to find out, this individual that had been electrocuted and died was carrying a metal bicycle over his head, and he had walked in. The line was hanging that far down. He just walked right into the high-powered line.
Oh.
and it killed him instantly.
Okay. So then he's there for a period of
Several days. Yes.
You approach, but you don't touch the line.
No.
You just get within a certain
I was
proximity.
about 75 feet away, and I stepped off the well-worn trail, into a patch of grass, and I felt the electrical current enter my left leg, or what I thought was my left leg, but it just terrified me, because having worked with electricity before, I knew what was happening, and I fully expected to have my life end right
You
then.
could feel the electricity going through you.
Oh yeah,
and you thought this is it.
I could hear it snap, crackling, and popping, just like a police taser.
Yeah,
and we've all been tased.
Yeah,
that's only 5 seconds. This was a good 28 seconds, because I counted as I look off in the clouds. Yeah. I'm expecting, okay, this is it, and I'm counting 1,001, 1,002. I get to 28, and I fall. I feel like I'm falling to the ground, and I'm like, okay, I'm dead. I'm being helped up by my 2 officers, and the next thing I know, my cell phone's in my hand. I have no idea where it came from, but I'm like, I guess I'm not dead.
But you told me this story before. Your shirt was smoking.
Well, I didn't know that at the time. I call my wife and say, honey, I need you to meet me at KU. I just got hit with some electricity, and I got to go.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll call you when I get there, but I'm okay. I just got a bad electrical shock. So I walked down to the end of the hill, and the fire captain, who ironically his wife was my trauma room nurse when I had my motorcycle wreck, was down there, and he starts patting my shoulder, and I'm like, what's up? And he's like, dude, your shirt's on fire. And I look over to my left shoulder, and the back of my shirt is smoking, and you can see the little black circles start to spread out. There was about 27 different holes where it was smoldering.
Yeah, where the electricity had either entered or exited.
Yeah, so from what they're saying is it entered my body on the left. It stayed on the left side. That's why it didn't kill me. It went from, which is ironic because I stepped into the circuit or the electrical field, but the smoldering pieces were in my shirt, but I had a burn mark at the top of the calf muscle on my left leg. So that's either where it went in or went out.
Right. Wow. But now what kind of, you had burns, okay? Mm-hmm. So what kind of effects? Electricity, being electrocuted kind of implies that someone died, but when you've been shocked, that leaves some strange injuries and side effects.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time.
So tell me about your experience. What happened?
I went to
recovering
KU
from this.
I went to the burn unit. They kept me overnight, and I didn't know that when you get an electrical injury like this, it shuts your kidneys down. And before they can release you, you have to prove to the medical staff that you can urinate.
Really?
Because if you can't, that's an outward sign that you've got permanent damage to your kidneys. Right. So aside from the whatever medicine they gave me, charcoal-based whatever, plus all the fluids, I had to. This was the one time you go to the hospital, they will not put a catheter in. This was drink and pee.
Right. And
so they kept me overnight, and finally about 10:30 that morning, I was finally able to consistently pee in enough sequence of more than one time that they agreed that I could go home.
Okay. But that's probably not the end of it then.
No. That was June of 13.
Right.
In August, I felt like I was having a heart attack. The first time I went to urgent care. The second time I went to Providence. And at Providence, they gave me 2 nitroglycerin tablets. Mm-hmm. They said your troponin level's elevated. It's like 5 or 6. And I don't know what the range is, but they said mine was like 5 or 6.
Right.
They gave me 2 nitroglycerin tablets. It felt like somebody flushed a toilet. And I felt fine. They sent me home. Right. They said, we don't know. You need to go see a specialist. So I go to a specialist. Have to do a stress test, the whole 9 yards. That they put a person suspected of heart problems or heart damage through. I aced all of those. They're like, we don't know why you're here. I said, okay, go back to work. Fast forward to the next time. This is August or September of that same year. I'm on my way home in uniform, and I'm like, this isn't good. So now I go to urgent care. I'm like, look, can you give me an EKG? Yeah. They're like, there's no problem. Your troponin level's 0. but you need to go. You don't need an ambulance. You're not having a heart attack, but you need to go to KU.
Yeah.
Because KU will give you a better answer than what we can. So my wife and I drive to KU, and I go in there, and there's no room in the inn, so they put me in a hallway. And I lay there on a gurney for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because with this form of test that they have to do, they have to watch you and observe symptoms and do blood work and everything for a period of 7 hours to determine from onset of injury or onset of symptoms that you have to the end of 7 hours, where are you at? And the young resident that came out said, you've got permanent muscle damage. It's not damage to your heart. Your heart's healthy, very healthy. You incurred muscle damage of some sort somewhere in your body. And so when you feel this, that's just that muscle damage talking.
Right.
He said, we can give you medicine for it, but it will mask. But since the symptoms are identical to what a true heart attack feels like, you eventually, if you did ever have a heart attack, you'd never know it. You'd die.
Right.
I said, I don't need the medicine then.
Yeah.
And so I just left.
Yeah.
And that was, like I said, September of 2013.
How much effect did that have on you going back to work as an officer? I mean,
None.
Okay. So you just,
Because I knew that
whatever kind of pains you had, you just knew, okay, this is something that's just a side effect of the electric shock.
And again, I'm not in charge of my days.
Yeah.
I knew God was. I knew there was there must have been a reason why I wasn't killed in the motorcycle wreck.
Yeah.
There must have been a reason why the electricity didn't take me.
Right.
So now, what's that reason? I don't know.
Yeah. Now, you have a couple pretty serious injuries there. Do you have any advice? Because I'm sure you've also seen other officers get hurt and had other officers you were in charge of that, got hurt and had to go through the whole process of getting back to duty and everything. Do you have any advice for their families? Like when an officer can't do what he wants, when he wants to be a police officer and he can't do that because he's laid up with a broken leg or whatever it may be, is there anything that could be done to kind of help the family life? What kind of advice would you give in that regard?
One of the first recommendations I have, aside from having a strong church, is having and reading more than one time the book Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement.
Okay.
I think it's by Dr. Gilliard.
Okay.
Or the book I Love a Cop. And from a spouse's and family's perspective, they need to understand that your officer is seeing things and participating in the defense of or responding to the trauma of a situation or a scene that most people will never, ever in their life walk through or witness. When your officer does encounter that, this book is priceless.
Yeah.
Because Dr. Gilliard talks about how to react, how to talk, how to respond to anything that your officer might or might not be feeling. Give them space. Thankfully, my wife we never had an issue with this, but there are times when I know I've read of it, I've heard of it from other officers. They go home and they are bombarded from the minute they walk in with either a honey-do list or a complaint or let's go here, let's go to that. And that officer has just finished a 4-hour investigation of the death of a child or a traumatic accident where they've seen blood and gore that no one should ever experience.
Yeah.
And they just simply want to decompress, take that vest off, take that gun belt off, grab a shower, and just chill for 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Then once they get that opportunity to regroup both mentally and spiritually, then they're ready to take on the family or the wife or the kids, whatever.
Right. And depending on personality, it might even be beneficial at that point to do some productive, constructive kind of activities.
Go to the gym.
Go
to the gym, go to the range.
Good, healthy things to do.
Work outside, do something. This is not the time to go home and pop a cold one.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you can do.
That's been something as a chaplain I'm deeply concerned about, that I see young officers that don't appear to have much in the way of coping mechanisms beyond cursing and drinking. And both of those maybe do a little bit of good, but they come with a lot of bad. And I really want to encourage them. Okay, let's find some good, constructive, healthy, positive things to do to deal with the trauma, deal with the stress, and I worry that maybe our society has kind of fallen down as far as preparing young men and women to go into a field where you're going to deal with life and death, and you're going to see suicides and car accident victims and things that are pretty upsetting. That maybe people were a little more resilient in generations past, and I don't know if everyone has that today. Some do, and they do a great job. They really weather it well. But I've definitely have witnessed some individuals that I felt like, man, I don't trust that they have a lot of that resiliency, and I want to help them find it, and I think their families are key to helping them in that area.
The family is definitely, but more importantly, having a strong church, and not only the church, but a personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
Is without that, you're basically treading water.
Yeah.
You're going to eventually reach a culminating point in your life where you can't put any more stress into the structure without something breaking.
Yeah.
And when it breaks, if you don't have that foundation to fall back on or to lean on or depend on,
Yeah.
It's going to be traumatic.
Yeah. Well, and having that background in church and that kind of thing gives you a way of understanding the world. And in church, we talk quite a bit, because the Bible does. We talk quite a bit about good and evil. We don't pretend like everybody's good. No, there's evil inside all of our hearts, and there is legitimate wickedness in this world.
We're born that way.
Yeah, and we understand that is something that's out there, and I feel like our society kind of says, "Oh, everybody's good, and people are just misunderstood, or they just need to be educated."
They have blinders on.
Yeah, it's like, man, if you go out into the real world and encounter legitimate evil, where some evil person is hurting a child or something like that, and there's no misunderstanding, it is just wickedness, that might rattle you. And that's kind of what I was referencing, that I worry maybe there's not a lot of resources, because a lot of young adults today have no church background. They were not raised in church and left. They never were there in the first place. And so I really feel like that was a component that was baked into the cake in our society a generation or two ago that's absent now. And that leads to more PTSD, more difficulty, less resiliency, etc. Yeah. Let me ask, you had not only your injuries, but in 2017, you were involved in 2 shootings in less than 3 weeks.
Yes.
A lot of officers would go their entire career and not be in a shooting. I know the first shooting probably can't talk about a lot of details, but can you give me kind of a rundown of what happened in each of those?
I had come into work early because I was going to a recruiting seminar with the military the following morning, so I flexed my hours a little bit so I'd compensate for being gone that day. And we got the word that there were some people of interest that we were trying to stop based on their criminal activity. It was alleged that they were suspects in a homicide. Mm-hmm. So when we were alerted that they were moving, we tried to stop them. They attacked one of our officers and started shooting at his vehicle, and we were all kind of there. So we returned fire. No one died, but that was my first on-duty shooting.
Yeah, boy, and I've talked to several officers, been in that kind of situation where it goes from nothing to everything, 0 to 100 in just real quick, and then it's over. It goes right back to 0, and whether someone's injured or killed, the fact that bullets were flying, and they find, go back, and we had an officer here this last year that got out of his vehicle and was shot at, and the bullet went through the windshield and hit the headrest where he had been. And I mean, if he'd got out of his vehicle a little slower, would have hit him.
Exactly.
And it's that kind of.
But that's the nature of police work.
Yes.
99 or 95% boredom, paperwork, basic patrolling, and 5 minutes or 5% of total chaos under attack. But with this shooting, I never was anxious. I felt at peace. Mm-hmm. I felt like this is police work. This is what I'm here for.
Right.
Do your job.
And it's the right thing.
It was just like we had been all the training we had gone through up to that point. It was like you've rehearsed, and now it's here. And it's like, okay, this is just like they told us in training. Right. This is exactly how it was going to be.
Right.
So it was no surprise.
Right. Well, it's clean in the sense that the police officers are not going to try to shoot these people.
No,
that
it's
wasn't
the last
intention.
Shooting someone is the last thing a police officer wants to do.
Yeah.
All we want is for people to obey the law.
Yeah.
Comply.
Yeah. But you had an officer attacked, and so the other officers responded.
Yeah, we defended him.
Respond. Right.
Yeah, we defended him as well as ourselves.
Yeah.
That just, I called my wife once the situation stabilized, and I said, hey, I didn't know she was asleep at the time. I just said, hey, I've been involved in officer-involved shooting. I'll be home later. I'm okay.
Right.
We hung up. She went back to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got home a few hours later. We talked about it for a few minutes. We both went to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. There's always a lot of investigation. If a police officer discharges his firearm, there's a significant paperwork that follows. And so sometimes families maybe don't quite understand that aspect of it, that there's going to be a lot of investigation. I mean, there's a large burden on law enforcement to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and for very important reasons.
Right.
We want to be accountable to the public, that kind of thing. And sometimes I think I've seen family members that get really defensive because they think that their loved one's being accused of something. And
again, this goes back to the book I Love a Cop and the book Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, because both authors take the family through the various stages of an officer-involved shooting investigation.
Right.
What to expect, what not to expect. Expect this when your officer comes home. My wife and I had been through that. We had read the book together, I had explained parts of the book to her, so she wasn't worried.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And her statement was, I wasn't worried about you being involved in a shooting at work because you have your equipment, you have your training, and you have your partners.
Yeah.
You're a team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. So then just less than 3 weeks later, you're off duty, and you have another interesting encounter, and you can probably tell me a little bit more about that. So what happened?
Well, a friend of mine had asked me to help him unload a very heavy fireplace that he had bought, an electrical fireplace. He had bought at Costco the day before, or that day and on Saturday. And so I went over there and limping and gimping, helped him get it on out of his truck and into this house. And I took one look at it, and I'm like, this is nice.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was completely heating the whole basement part of his house. So I thought, well, my wife and I, we don't have a fireplace. So I could afford this. So my friend talked me into going out to Costco with him. We went in the store, and it was packed. This was the Sunday after Black Friday that year.
Okay.
So you can imagine how packed the stores were on that
Christmas
Sunday.
Shoppers.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this was 10, about 10:56.
Okay.
Right before 11, we got there. They opened right at 10. There were probably several thousand people in the store by that time. And the aisles were full. So we grabbed a cart, pushed it all the way down there, had a couple of employees help us load it on because, again, my knee was messed up.
Yeah.
It really hurt to walk on it, let alone put a heavy load on it. My friend started pushing the cart, and I was walking in front of the cart, kind of clearing the people out of the way, letting them know we were coming so we could make it up to the checkout. And as we were making our way to the checkout line, somebody screamed, and then everybody started running past me. And at first I'm thinking, I don't hear a fire alarm.
Right.
What's going on? And I couldn't. Mark looked at me, and we looked at one another, and we're like, what in the world? And I tried to stop a dozen people, and everybody kept running by me. And finally, I physically put my hands on a young man and pulled him into the aisle. And I said, I'm a police officer. What's going on? He goes, there's a guy up front. He's shooting people. I think we got an active shooter. And I'm like, okay. No, so tell me the problem. And he goes, well, he's up there. And then he made it past me and took off. So I gave my keys to Mark, told him to get out of the building, call 911, tell them what agency I worked with, tell them what my name was, and give them a detailed description of what I was wearing. That was very critical.
Right.
And he did.
And everybody's flooding to the back of the store and getting out the back of the store.
Well, they're going out all different doors as they run away from the suspect. I step back out into the main aisle, and I see one of the managers. He's about a good 150 yards away, 150 feet, I mean, waving me. And somehow my badge is in my hand, and I'm like, look, I'm a cop. What's the problem? And he said, we got a guy over there. Looks like he's an older white male wearing a camo jacket and khaki colored pants, and he's got a long gun, and he's telling people he's here to kill them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got this. Go. So the manager fled with the rest of the employees, and as I'm sure you've seen it on the video clip, I make my way. I see this. I make eye contact, or I don't see him, and he and I don't make eye contact, I don't think. But I see him, and I hear him yelling, I'm an off-duty U.S. Marshal. I'm here to kill people.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you're not.
That's not what marshals do.
No. One, I knew we don't have any marshals, U.S. Marshals, that look like this guy did.
Right.
So I maneuver as best I can with my messed up knee to get behind him, because I'm thinking, if I've got to fight this guy, the advantage is going to go to me, not him.
Yeah.
And I'm dumping multiple courses of action reaction drills through my brain, thousands of them at a time.
Yeah.
Almost feels like they're all going at the same time. Do I shoot here? Do I shoot here? Do I do this? Do I that? At that point, he gets to the far end of the aisle, and he turns left, going west, as he's following the people, as he pushes a grocery cart. Well, this time I can see he's got a pistol with about a 12 or 14-inch barrel. Because at the time I'm thinking he's got a rifle. The manager said long gun, and I'm thinking...
It's like a long-barreled revolver.
Long barrel. But he said long gun, so I'm thinking this is a rifle. So I remember grabbing my shirt, my blue polo shirt that I had on that day. Mike, this is going to hurt. You're probably going to get shot, but you're not going to die. It's only a bullet wound. You're not going to let this guy win. I talked to myself the whole time. I was tracking this guy through the store.
Yeah.
He turns left and starts about halfway across the store, and he says, I'm an off-duty U.S. Marshal, and I'm here to kill you. So at that point, I think I'm made. But he still keeps going. So I get around behind him. We go back toward the aisle, back by aisle 321. He's still chasing people. They're running, kids, older folks, younger folks. They're just trying to get out the doors as fast as they can. And I'm thinking, okay, he's trying to get back to this back corner of the store to where he can just start taking pot shots at people.
Yeah, the video I've seen, everyone flees the majority of people seem like they're fleeing to the back of the store. And he seems pretty methodically just moving back.
Yep.
But then in the video, we can see you moving up kind of through the middle of the store, moving from aisle to aisle, kind of stalking him.
Well, I was trying to use the displays as concealment. So he couldn't see me approaching him. And once he because what you see on the video was only one quarter of the video screens. There were people flowing out. I've got another video shot of the cameras that are going toward the automotive section, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people running out that way. Why he didn't turn that way, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he continued on, and he said, one more time, I'm an off-duty U.S. Marshal, and I'm here to kill people. So I got behind him. I knew that, one, I was responsible for every round that I was going to lose, let go in my defense. I wanted to make sure I had a strong backstop, which I was hoping would be a concrete wall, which turned out that it was. I wanted there to be no one in the aisle other than him and I.
Yeah.
And so once he passed the aisle and crossed into a long area, which was nothing, where they had dog food and cat food and stuff, I identified myself as a police officer, told him to drop the gun and don't move. And when I said it the second time, he turned around and pointed his gun at me, and I fired.
Yeah. Yeah. You had your duty weapon on you that day. You were in civilian clothes, but you went to Costco on your day off with your weapon.
That's normal.
I think I've heard you say before, you don't leave the bedroom without the
I don't
without a gun on you.
I made a promise to myself and my wife that if I ever, once I put the badge on, I would never be unarmed.
Yeah.
On or off duty, unless it was like a federal building where you're not allowed.
Right. Yeah, there's restrictions in some places.
In accordance with the law, I would always be armed.
Yeah. Well, I am glad you were there that day. That man was deranged. He said he wanted to kill people. If you had not been there, I mean, there were other people who might have been, carrying concealed, but
there were,
but they didn't react. They didn't jump in like you did. Yeah.
So after it happened, I called her and got permission from the responding officers to, let me call my wife and give her a heads up. I said, hey, there's been an incident out at Costco. I had to shoot and kill this guy that came in trying to kill people. And that bothered her. And I'm thinking, I just called you 2 weeks ago and you said, everything.
Yeah,
she said,
you weren't bothered when you were on duty.
You were by yourself, no radio, no vest, no backup, no partners.
Yeah. Yeah, you were more out on a limb.
What were you thinking? And
I
said, I had a job to do.
Yeah.
But it was weird. The just like I said with the first shooting, when I was alerted by the manager and I really, truly understood what was going on, it was like a warm oil was poured over my
You had
my
a peace.
back.
You had a peace
I was
about
completely at peace. I knew, and I'm not meaning to sound facetious or overbearing or anything like that. My thought was, you've trained for 24 years for such an event.
Yeah.
Now's the time.
Yeah.
You have got to stop this guy before he kills or injures someone.
Yeah. Yeah. You've made a commitment in your heart that you are going to go toward the danger for the sake of innocent people.
Yeah.
That's what a law enforcement officer does.
Regardless of the outcome.
Right. Like I said, I'm glad that you were there that day. I think if you ask a simple chaplain, why did you survive the electrocution? Why did you survive the motorcycle accident? It's for things like this, and maybe not exclusively this, but I think it's things like this that how many lives might have been taken. I mean, he was carrying enough ammunition to hurt 12.5 people. That could have happened if not for a good guy intervening. And you did. And I appreciate that as someone who lives here.
I appreciate it. And I've met hundreds of people that either were there or their children were there, their children worked there. In fact, my knee was messed up because my meniscus was torn, and when I had to go have it repaired with a round of surgery, one of my nurses happened to be there that day.
Yeah.
And she broke down before they put me under the anesthetic. I was talking to one nurse and telling her, this is where I was. They're like, hang on a second. And they brought her in there, and she was just bawling.
Yeah.
And I never would have met her without that. But, talking about how officers respond to events like this, the biggest problem I have, or let me back up. The only problem I have with what happened that day is there are times when I'm either going through my day or I'm laying there relaxing in bed, getting ready to go to sleep, and the question, I know it's the devil. I know it's the devil. well, what would have happened if you wouldn't have been there?
Yeah.
And I can't answer that because I don't know.
Right.
But my response to him, other than I know who wins, is I was put there for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a hero. I'm not claiming to be one. Maybe the reason why I wasn't killed in my motorcycle wreck, maybe the reason why I wasn't killed in that electrical injury, maybe the reason why I was not killed in any of my deployments with the military,
Yeah.
was the fact that God wanted me there at 10:58 in Costco that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I won't know that answer until I
Absolutely.
ask him that question.
Well, I can give you an official pass as a minister in a church. You are excused from services that day if you're going to be there to save lives. So that's you get a pass on that one. All right. Let me ask just one last question. You went through these shootings. You went through the injuries. Can you talk to me about how your faith and other resources help you after these traumatic events?
Well, one of the biggest recommendations, other than those two books that I mentioned, I Love a Cop and Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement, is to not only read the Bible, to understand why law enforcement is doing the job they're doing.
Yeah.
And we have rules and governments and edicts and that we have to follow.
Understand justice, understand God's character and that kind of thing. Yes.
I travel the country sharing my story about Costco, how to survive an active shooter situation. Mm-hmm. But aside from the tactics of that, a good portion, I'd say probably 50% of my seminar is focused on the mental resiliency or the mental survival of what happens after bang. Right. And one of the most prolific authors that I have followed since joining the military is retired Colonel Dave Grossman.
Yeah.
He has traveled the country extensively. He's an Army Ranger.
Yeah, I've heard him speak. I've read his books. Yes.
I could listen to him all day long.
Yeah.
He has written several great books on combat, on killing, and one other one. I've got all three. And I've read them. I mean, they're dog-eared copies now.
Oh, yeah.
But he talks about the mind and the psyche of a human and why some people can kill, why some can't, how you survive a lethal force encounter, why some soldiers never fired their gun in combat, even when they were fired upon, up to now to where we're training with fat simulators and our soldiers are much more resilient. They're much more lethal, but it's all because of this mental training. And law enforcement officers go through the same thing. Mm-hmm. I know on our department, we spent a large amount of time, not enough, but a large amount of time on our FAT simulator, which is a digital simulation system that puts you right there. Mm-hmm. And it's all laser computer generated stuff, but it puts you right there in the scenario. And having done that, I think truly prepared me for Costco more than anything else.
Really?
Because I don't remember drawing my gun.
Right.
I remember firing it, but I don't remember drawing it or...
Yeah. A lot of muscle memory things were already in place.
It happened instantly.
Yeah.
I mean, I drew my gun as I started stalking him, but I don't remember... I mean, I do, but I don't.
Right. But a lot of training kicked in.
Yeah. It's just, I didn't use my front sights. I just pointed because that's where the threat was. And it happened.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad that everything ended the way it did. No innocents were lost.
Yeah.
No innocent lives were lost. No one was injured. And evil was stopped that day. I honestly can't remember where I saw this, but it's as vivid right now as if the roll of rope was right here. Picture in your mind the largest industrial size roll of white rope that you can picture.
Yeah.
6, 8, 10 feet across. Taller than a human. I mean, they can't even reach up and touch the top of the wooden wheel that holds all this rope together. The first inch of that rope is painted red.
Okay.
What do you think that red represents?
Yeah, that smallest little fraction.
That small 0.000000001 amount of that long rope is your time here on earth.
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Because the Bible says your time on earth is just like a vapor. It's gone.
Yep.
I think it was King Solomon that said that.
Yep. It's appointed every man to die once and then judgment.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of eternity.
And that's what really bothers me with these active shooters and problems, because a large number of them are kids, thinking that that's the only way to respond to deal with their problems. Once it's over with, I'll just push reboot and I'll be back.
Yeah.
There is no do-over.
No. This is our one chance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be asked when we stand in front of God at the judgment seat of Christ, what did you do with what I gave you?
Yeah.
Whether it's 12 years, 45 years, 95 years, or 112. What did you do with the time I gave you? To the officer that's out there that's struggling with either a horrific crime scene they've seen and they can't understand how to deal with it,
Yeah.
or traumatic injury or traumatic, how do you handle this? The only way I was able to handle it was through church.
Yeah.
I knew that, like KU, for example, my wife took me to church several times before I was released from KU in a wheelchair, but I don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But my church was there. They all stood by me, and when I was overseas, all 3 times, they sent me CDs of all the sermons, so I wouldn't miss a service.
Yeah.
I mean, now you can get it on the internet, but before the age of the internet, like we are now, where everybody's got services on video or on YouTube, they would send me a CD, and that meant a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for that officer that's questioning himself or looking at that gun, thinking about picking it up and ending their life, don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you might be surprised too, especially if you've not ever been in church, how law enforcement friendly most churches are.
They are.
Most churches would be thrilled to have you there.
Now, the challenge that a lot of officers have is smaller departments probably can get away with this a lot easier, but you're on the job. Most chiefs won't let you attend a service in uniform on duty because you have a responsibility. Yeah. You're on the clock. The citizens are paying you to provide a service.
Yeah. But
there are some departments that allow you to slip in, put an earpiece in, turn the radio down, and you can at least attend and listen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
No problem.